Good afternoon and good evening to everybody joining us today. Thank you so much for attending today's session, which is a UDP Cloud Direct technical overview and demo. My name is Mary Owen, and I'm going to be helping out our hosts today. They are Christoph Bertrand, who is our VP of Product Marketing, and Keith Summers, who is our Cloud Direct Product Manager. So as we're going through the presentation and the demo, I'm sure you'll have lots of questions, so please do send those to us using the question section of your interface, and we'll get to as many of those as we can at the end of the event. Today's webcast is also being recorded, so you can keep an eye out for an email shortly after this with a link to that recording. So with that out of the way, take it away, Christoph.
Thank you, Mary. Hello, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here today. And in the next few minutes, we are going to tell you a little bit more about our cloud-based offerings, and we'll specifically focus on our newest portfolio offerings, our Cloud Direct solutions. So on the next slide, I just want to take a couple of minutes and tell you a little bit more about who we are, if you don't know us. We are a global company with over 500 employees around the world, a presence in over 150 countries, and we work through a network of partners. We've been very successful with our newest solution, Arcserve UDP, which we introduced about 3 years ago, and where we already have well over now, I think, 27,000 customers even. This is an older number, and we keep adding customers to the platform every day. We have been recognized as a very robust solution. Thank you to our customers, and thanks to also a number of industry awards where our quality of the solution, the ability to provide enterprise class features with small team simplicity has been recognized by many of the industry publications and some of the key events such as VMworld, for example, for our virtualization capabilities. So lots of awards, lots of great success for us. I can also share with you that our business is doing really well. We are growing faster than the market. I won't bore you with numbers, but just know that we are actively gaining market share and doing really well. So it's great to be part of Arcserve, and it's also great to have new offerings to provide, and that's exactly what I'll talk about in a minute. We provide three types of offerings or services, if you will: appliances, essentially disaster recovery as a service, and software. So depending on your requirements and your use case, we can provide you with a solution that's going to fit your environment and the way you like to consume the technology. Today, the focus will be on the right-hand side of that cloud component, the disaster recovery as a service piece. So let's move to the next slide. Let's talk about the issues that we see in the market, and let me tell you that we've done a lot of research. We've talked to a number of you, our end users. We've talked to many of our partners and also to industry experts and analysts. And when you bring it all together, we're in a very interesting situation today in the market that is driven by a number of external forces as well as some natural internal forces as businesses evolve. We're seeing a lot of mounting risks and a lot of really the explosion of ransomware driving a need for very robust backup and recovery solutions. But here's the thing. In the markets we focus on, which is the mid-market, so 500 to 2,500 employees, we see that the requirements are those of the very, very large enterprises, yet you don't have all of the resources, all of the budgets that the largest companies in the world may have. So it's very critical to deliver this enterprise-level capability with a lot of simplicity. Overall, I think it's fair to say that there is essentially very little tolerance for more than a few seconds or a few minutes of downtime. And in many cases, critical applications will cost a lot of money to your business if they're down or unavailable for a period of time. And that period of time is very, very short. It sounds obvious, but it's something that's very important because in the context of these external forces, mounting risks, and the complexity that you see in the environments, it's very important to have something that will provide you with a very quick way to recover your data. In addition, on the infrastructure side, we see that there are some complexities associated with having multiple locations, having multiple platforms, whether you're dealing with hypervisors or operating systems, and where should you have your backups? Should they be on-premise? Should they be in the cloud? What are the capabilities that you have to recover data at a point in time that makes sense for you and quickly enough to be back in business based on an issue affecting your systems? So lots of options here that actually add to the complexity. On the next slide, what I'd like to do is cover a little bit more of how we approach this from a cloud perspective. And there are really two options or two different topologies that we bring to the table with the Arcserve UDP offering. One of them is what we call the Arcserve Hybrid Cloud. And the D to D to C means disk to cloud. So the data goes from, say, your hypervisor or your servers to a backup server or a backup appliance, and then off to the cloud. It could be a private cloud, it could be a public cloud. I'm actually going to cover the many use cases that we offer with our offering. Or you can go to a cloud directly with our Arcserve Cloud Direct offering, which is the newest offering we're discussing today in more detail. As a matter of fact, you'll get a demonstration of how powerful and easy to use the solution is. So this is a great solution here. Two options: disk to cloud or direct to cloud. Which one is better for you? Well, this is what we'll talk about and take you through the capabilities in a minute. On the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how Arcserve UDP works, and this is really where the hybrid disk to cloud solution comes into play. And Keith, if you don't mind clicking 3 more times, we're going to build this picture up where you can see that from a primary site we can replicate data to from branch offices or to another location or to the public cloud. So if you focus your attention to the left-hand side, what you can see is the Arcserve UDP technology, which is our platform, allows you to replicate data from your local servers to a local appliance or local server, then off to the cloud. Again, lots of options here that we support, and I will break them down for you. This is a very traditional model, and of course, one that works extremely well, and we have many customers leveraging the built-in replication and deduplication of our UDP solution. What we are adding today, and we'll discuss, is the ability to go direct to cloud. So that's going to be something we'll cover in a minute. On the next slide, I want to cover some of the specific support areas that we have in terms of public cloud, and I will explain a couple of the acronyms if you're not familiar with them. First of all, we have an offering which is called the Arcserve Cloud, which is where we essentially leverage UDP and, as you just saw in the previous diagram, take the data from your Arcserve UDP backup appliance or backup server and then send it off to the Arcserve Cloud. So this is something that allows you to get essentially disaster recovery as a service with the ability to also spin up virtual machines when you need them, should you have to recover following a problem, a disaster, ransomware attack, whatever the case may be. But we also support public cloud. We support Amazon, whether EC2 or S3. There are different use cases which are listed here. You will see on the left-hand side that we talk about VSB and IVM. VSB stands for virtual standby, essentially, and IVM stands for instant virtual machine. And these are capabilities that allow us within UDP and, of course, in the public cloud, such as EC2, to stand up a virtual machine when you need it, where you can then essentially go recover or run the data that you need and the servers that you need from those virtual machines. So the benefit of this is that instead of having to have a system or a backup server always running, we can essentially just replicate the data on a regular basis. 15 minutes RPO is what you can get to, and then spin up the machine when you need it. It saves you in terms of costs of compute versus having the system running all the time. So a great way here to combine the advanced capabilities of UDP as you would have them on premise, but also take that to the public cloud and cut your bill down a little bit here. Of course, you can run Arcserve UDP always on in the public cloud, whether Azure or Amazon. If that's what you decide to do, that's perfectly fine, and it gives you a slightly better profile in terms of recovery time objective and recovery point objective. We also support longer-term type of storage through Amazon S3. Same thing with Azure, and I will just say that we also provide a high availability capability with our high availability option or module, which allows you to literally either migrate data to the cloud with this continuous data replication capability, but also fail over to the cloud and fail back from the cloud. And that's, again, the public cloud, in this case, Amazon. So lots of possibilities for you here with Arcserve UDP disk to cloud or hybrid cloud. But there's more. On the next slide, I'm going to introduce you to a couple of new offerings we have. We've been growing well, growing fast. We're taking market share. We're a successful business, and our customers are asking us to add capabilities to our portfolio. One of them is the archiving offering, Arcserve UDP archiving, which is a great solution and works extremely well in cloud environments, whether private or public, as you can see. So lots of capabilities for you here if what you're trying to do is archive email. But today, I'd like to highlight the Arcserve UDP Cloud Direct Backup as a Service and the Arcserve UDP Cloud Direct Disaster Recovery as a Service. These are our new offerings that will not necessitate, in this case, the use of a second system. It's a direct-to-cloud from the backup, from the server you're trying to back up, the machines you're trying to back up, directly to the Arcserve cloud. Okay, so different from having an appliance or a gateway or a backup server. So again, it is great for certain use cases. We'll cover some of them. Both topologies or methodologies have their advantages and very much need to coexist in most environments. And we are going to spend a little more time on the capabilities and features of these two offerings. So on the next slide, I would like to just give you a quick introduction to what the two services are, and then I will turn it over to Keith, who will then take you through the detailed feature functions. I think it will answer some of the questions we're getting, and also take you through a demonstration of this great solution. So first of all, the first offering or service is essentially backup as a service, and again, it's Cloud Direct. It's called Cloud Direct because it doesn't require another box. You go straight to cloud, and you can manage everything from the console. You can recover files very easily from, again, a web-based UI and console. So it's very easy to set up, and it's very easy, more importantly, to recover data to anywhere and really from anywhere because it's web-based. This solution, this technology, was born in the cloud. So this is a true cloud-native solution. And then the next thing you can do is sort of upgrade or go to the next level of availability and recoverability by having the disaster recovery as a service option, where there are many great capabilities. Just to give you a preview, first of all, a recovery time objective of less than 5 minutes. It's a push-button recovery where human intervention is minimized, and it does automate and orchestrate a lot of the complexities associated with failing over and failing back, meaning a lot of the networking, VPN, firewall, a lot of these operational components are very key if you want to actually fail over or run from the cloud, and we take care of that for you. We try to limit human intervention so that you can be very quickly back on your feet, leveraging your latest backups. It's also great for testing and automated disaster recovery testing, and it's one of the areas that's actually the most critical from an operational perspective. Having this capability makes you better, and practice is very, very key when it comes to disaster recovery. Let's go into the details. I'd like to turn it over to you, Keith, now for the feature functions of our new offerings.
Thank you, Christophe, and hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'd just like to run through some of the key features of the UDP Cloud Direct Backup as a Service solution. As is in the name, Direct to Cloud, by deploying an agent onto your system, your on-premise system, the data is backed up directly to the cloud with built-in WAN optimizations to ensure that you're optimally using your the bandwidth available. There is an option to have a local copy stored of your backup. However, the product was primarily designed to push as much data as quickly directly from your on-premise environment into the cloud. Security and data integrity is absolutely key here. The data that you protect, you want to make sure that you're able to recover. The data is encrypted in flight as well as at rest in our data centers. And from a portal standpoint, we also, for those customers who may need additional security, we also support Google two-factor authentication. So if that's something that customers are in need of for that extra user authentication or that extra bit of security, that's available as well. And then from a data integrity standpoint, on the back end, when the data is stored in our cloud, we make operational procedures. We have operational procedures to ensure that your data is immutable as well as it is recoverable. So we do some things on the back end to ensure that, which is very key, to ensure that your data is available and ready and recoverable when you need it. As was mentioned, it's a web-based management portal, actually a single web-based management portal. If you can get to a URL, then you can manage, configure the solution. And in fact, this one portal manages both products. So with one portal, if you have backup as a service and or disaster recovery as a service, then you can manage it from one user interface. Multiple recovery options. So once the data is backed up in our data center, you can mount a recovery point. First of all, we give you multiple recovery points to select from when you choose to do a recovery. You can mount a recovery point as a file share and navigate that way. Or if you wanted to navigate through a recovery point and download a file, download a folder, or if you've chosen to back up the entire server image, you can download the entire server image as well. We also protect virtual machines, so you can also download an entire virtual machine image as well. Comprehensive and automated data protection. We allow for initiating backups on demand as well as in a scheduled manner. So you can do it daily, and in some cases, when you're using the disaster recovery solution, it could be as often as every 6 hours. But from that schedule, you can back up files, you can back up folders. We also enable you to back up databases as well as from SQL or Exchange, and also you can back up the entire server if you want to make sure that in the event of a disaster, you can bring back all of the contents of that server. So a bit about the platform support. The agent that we make available can be deployed on physical hardware. You see over to the right the operating systems supported. We also support virtual systems, those virtual systems being either VMware. For VMware specifically, we have a virtual appliance that's deployed in your Hyper-V environment, in your VMware environment, that talks to your vCenter server, discovers your the VMs, and I will show this in the demo, discovers your VMs. You can specify which virtual machines you wish to protect, and then those are backed up directly to the cloud, and they can be restored from the cloud. For Hyper-V, we support protecting and backing up Hyper-V disk images as well as Hyper-V virtual machines. You deploy an agent to a Hyper-V host. It communicates with the host, discovers the virtual machines that are available, and also in an analogous manner to backing up VMware virtual machines, you can back up Hyper-V virtual machines. We do support, for physical systems, we support Mac and Linux as well as Windows. However, for Mac and Linux, the backup is only of files and folders. We don't do imaging of the Linux or Mac servers. However, if you are running Linux on a virtual machine, we are able to back up the virtual machine that is running Linux. So just an idea about some of the supported platforms. Here is a high-level overview of pretty much how the flow, if you will. You deploy, step one, you deploy the UDP Cloud Direct agent, which is a very lightweight piece of software that deploys to your operating system. If you're in a virtual environment, you deploy the virtual appliance, and it discovers the virtual machines. You specify a backup task. So how do you wish to back up and protect the system? You could either do files, folders, or in the case of Windows, you can back up the entire system. And in case of virtual machines, you simply are selecting the virtual machines that you wish to protect. That data is transferred using built-in WAN optimization over the public internet into our Arcserve Cloud, which is supported by 2 data centers, one data center on the West Coast in California, one data center on the East Coast, which is in New Jersey. There is the option, as I mentioned before, if you have local storage that you want to utilize, we can store the most current copy of a backup, but as I mentioned, the product was designed to move you directly to the cloud, as the name implies. Now, once the data is stored in the cloud, you can you log into the portal through any major web browser, and from there you can see what systems you're protecting. You can navigate your recovery points, and you can restore data from that standpoint. So this is just more of a high-level overview of the flow of the backup as a service solution. Now, a bit about our disaster recovery as a service solution, and these solutions are very complementary of one another. The 3 tenets that we wanted to keep in mind in developing this was make sure that it's enterprise grade, make sure that it's easy to use, and of course make sure that it's affordable. So enterprise grade, it was designed to move large amounts of data to the cloud over the internet as quickly as possible in a WAN optimized manner. Of course, ensuring that what you're backing up, you're able to recover is absolutely paramount. And making sure that any of that data is ready and on hand and on deck when you need it. Easy to use, as we mentioned, it's a cloud-based web portal that you can log in, and you can see a screenshot here, and I will also show more of it in the demo that's upcoming. We wanted it simple, easy to use, and very intuitive. That's our goal, and we're actually continually striving for that goal. Engineering support, engineering level support, 24/7. 365, and then also what we want to do is something that we've taken as a key initiative is the upfront configuration of the network. Once you're able to spin systems up in the cloud, that's great, but the next step to that is being able to access and connect to those systems that are in the cloud. And so what we do is we take the initiative to help customers set up either it's a point-to-site VPN connection or a site-to-site VPN connection. You can also, if need be, establish a remote desktop connection if you have a single server that you want to access that you spun up in the cloud. So that's very important because we want to make sure that at the time of disaster, you have everything that you need and that you're absolutely ready to continue your business should a disaster befall you. And then, of course, we wanted to make it affordable, no hidden costs. We don't charge you for bandwidth usage. We don't charge you for I/O activity when you're navigating through your recovery points. What we charge you for is your storage and then the compute resources that you need when at the time you boot up the systems in the cloud. So some other key features about the disaster recovery as a service solution, push button. So to activate or spin up a virtual instance of a protected server, it is actually a push button activate. I'll show that in our demo. And then the RTO is roughly about 5 minutes or about the time it takes for the operating system that you're protecting to boot up. DR testing, we do periodically spin up a virtual instance of the protected server, take a screenshot of the login to kind of give you that additional confidence and verification that we are able to power on the server in the event of a disaster, or if you simply want to do a test. It is extremely scalable. That it was designed to be extremely scalable, enterprise-grade scalable. When you decide when your on-prem environment grows and your need for DR protection grows, we want to make sure that we can grow with you. So as you need additional resources, we can make those resources available to you. Of course, there's the backup, there's the failing over in the cloud, and another very important piece is in the event of a disaster, you fail over to the cloud, you're leveraging the cloud to continue your operations, but after the on-premise disaster has been resolved, you want to bring back those resources, maybe that data that has been processed while the systems were running in the cloud, back to on-prem, and that's the failback process. Active Directory, we can offer an Active Directory to run in the cloud. When a customer subscribes to disaster recovery, they get a virtual data center. In that virtual data center, we can have an Active Directory server for you. So when you, in the time of disaster, you boot up your servers in the cloud, you can also have that ability to do some authentication. As mentioned earlier, and analogous with the backup solution, we do support physical and virtual servers as well. And as I mentioned, one key step is when you are provisioned this virtual data center, we want to make sure that networking, you get a firewall. So when you boot up your servers, they are on a network, they are behind a firewall, and we can also have that Active Directory server running for you if you so need to. Here is a more of a flow. It's very similar to our backup as a service, so you can almost see how these solutions are complementary. You deploy the agent onto a server, you protect the entire server image, or you can deploy the virtual appliance and protect the entire virtual machine, or you can actually deploy the agent directly to the guest operating system of a virtual machine. However you choose to do that, the entire image is protected and sent in a WAN optimized manner to our cloud and into your own virtual private data center, where you will have a firewall, where you have a VPN server, and at any time, in a time of disaster, or if you so choose to test, you can spin up a virtual instance of that protected server. You can also, in the same manner that you log into the web portal to manage, configure, administer your backup as a service, that same portal will allow you to configure, administer, and manage your disaster recovery systems as well. And I will show that in the demo coming up. And then, of course, once a disaster has been resolved, your on-premise environment is back up and running, you can do the failback from the cloud back to your on-premise environment. Use cases, the idea of use cases, so we just wanted to kind of present one use case. Just imagine a construction company that may have multiple sites. Each site has is generating data and has data, maybe it's stored centrally. One aspect or something that one could consider in using the disaster recovery, you can protect those systems that are at that remote site, back those up to the cloud. So if anything happens at that remote site, maybe servers go out, maybe they have a power outage locally at that construction site, they can log into the portal, they can, if they have internet access, they can spin up their systems in the cloud, and then they're able to access those servers that are running in the cloud. RTO within approximately 5 minutes or less, or however long it takes for each server to boot up, and then you're back up and running. You can establish a point-to-site VPN connection. You can also, if you so have access, you can set up a site-to-site VPN connection between that remote location and the recovery cloud in the Arcserve cloud. So just a use case, multiple sites protected in the cloud, as well as if you're protecting it at a central location, you spin up in the event of a disaster, and then those remote locations are still able to keep going. No need to deploy any additional hardware to maintain at those remote sites. Just deploy the agents, get the systems protected in the cloud, spin them up in the event of a disaster, and after the disaster has been resolved, you can fail them back to that particular remote location. Here's a bit more about the technology platform. Of course, as I mentioned, we have the portal that you can log into, web-based, supported by the major web browsers. We have the UDP Cloud Direct agent that's deployed onto the server. We also have a virtual appliance that can be deployed if you have a VMware environment. On the back end, we have an interface where you can connect to the environment. We have special tools and reporting. As you can see, there's silos on the back end for storing the backup as a service data. So if you're leveraging backup as a service, they go to the storage silos. As you can also see, we have storage silos that are connected to a virtualization fabric that allows you to spin those servers up in the event of disaster. So if you're protecting a system using disaster recovery, we can spin those servers up. We also provide APIs for you to access into the back end to gather some information if you want. If you have another user interface that you wish to plug into, we provide that capability as well. Now with that, those were some slide presentations, but I think the ideal thing to do would be to jump right into the demo and actually show you a bit about the product and show you the product in action. So here is the login portal. Very simple, straightforward. I'm using my email address and my password to log in. As I mentioned before, we also support Google two-factor authentication. So if there's a need for that additional security, or if that's part of your policy. Here I'm going to log in. We have two views. We have a managed service provider view, if you will, if you have multiple customers, or if you want to manage this as a single customer with multiple sites. This is an approach you can do. We have multiple customers here in this view, and then you get a summary of how many customers you have, how many systems, and then how much storage is being consumed across all of these customers. Here I can sort the customers by name, by usage, and the like. If I want more details for each particular customer, I'll pick this customer. I click here. I can see more details about this specific customer, how much data they're using, how many systems they have and they're protecting. If I want to get more detail about the systems, these 14 systems that are being protected, I just simply click here and then I come to the systems page. Now, if you were just doing the non-managed service provider view and the single customer view, so to speak, this is where you would enter and you would see all of the systems that you are protecting. And that's on this page here. And as you can see, you get a view of information about each system. Here, these are systems where the agent has been directly deployed. As you can see, we have filters here. If I want agent-based, so we refer to agent-based when the UDP Cloud Direct agent is deployed directly to the operating system. So I can filter those, and then I can only see the systems that have the agent directly deployed. From an agentless perspective, these are systems where I'm using a virtual appliance to protect these virtual machines. And so that's a view there. So here you get information about the systems that you're protecting. Here's the operating system, Windows as well as Linux. You can start a backup on demand, or you can also schedule. I will talk a bit more about enabling disaster recovery. This is an environment in this demo that has both backup as a service as well as disaster recovery as a service. Once I have the agent deployed onto the system, I can schedule when I want the backup to occur. I can set network bandwidth throttles, so to make sure that I'm not hogging up all of the available bandwidth when I perform these backups. And then here, I go down here to create a backup task. Now, the backup task is how you wish to protect the system. I can protect the system state. I can do files and folders. and then this is for Windows systems. For Linux systems, as I mentioned, and Mac, you are only able to do files and folders at this time. So you can do Hyper-V images, you can back up Hyper-V disk images, or you can go in and explore and pick the Hyper-V virtual machines that are discovered and protect the entire virtual machine. So you've created your backup task, and once a backup has taken place, you can also restore from this portal. So if I go in here, I can click, I want to do a restore. I click the backup task that I wish to restore, and then at this point, I can restore the whole recovery point. If it's a file, it'll be a file. If it's a folder, it'll be an entire folder. If it's the entire system image, it'll be the entire system image or virtual machine image. Or I can browse through the recovery point and navigate and find the system that the particular file that I want or folder that I want and download it from that perspective. So that's navigating from there. And then if I go back up here, let me go back to my systems. So this is protecting systems using the UDP Cloud Direct agent. Now, if I wanted to protect my virtual environment, I come to this virtualization tab here. I deploy a virtual appliance, and then this virtual appliance will communicate with your vCenter server, and it will go out and discover all of the virtual machines that are on that vCenter server. And from here, to protect a virtual machine is simply as easy as hitting Enable Backup. Once you enable backup for a virtual machine that the virtual appliance can see, it will appear on your Systems tab under your agentless servers. So as you can see, these are the virtual machines that I'm protecting. As you can see, those virtual machines can be running Linux, they can be running Windows. I can specify, create a backup, do it now, on demand, or I can configure a backup to be scheduled at any time. Likewise, just as in the case where I have agent-based protection, I can restore from this environment as well. Now, a bit about the disaster recovery. So this is where the complement comes in. If I'll go back to this systems, here you'll see the indication that I can enable this for disaster recovery. So on this particular system, I have the agent deployed. I want to come in here and I want to enable disaster recovery. I simply click this button. We will specify what the bootable image is so that you can boot the system up. We want to make sure that that's one of the disks that we are protecting so that it can be powered on in the cloud. You specify how much RAM you want this system to have when the system is powered on, when the virtual instance is powered on in the cloud. You specify your license if known. You hit save. That's it for enabling disaster recovery for a system. And then the indicator goes from enable for disaster recovery to this indication that it is being protected with disaster recovery. Right? So if you want to see which systems that you're protecting with disaster recovery, of course, you can come here on the Systems tab, or you can also do some filtering. Which systems do I have? The other option, if you want to administer or power on virtual systems, you go to the Disaster Recovery tab. Here, as I mentioned, I'll say a bit more about the connectivity options, point-to-site and site-to-site VPN connectivity. This page shows you the virtual machines or the systems that you're protecting using the disaster recovery as a service. Here, as you can see, I have two systems that I'm protecting. As I mentioned earlier, we do periodically power up the virtual instance to make sure, to give you that confidence that it is indeed bootable, if you will. Here, if I want to activate a system in the cloud, I simply hit the activate button. If I want to activate this file server, I specify what recovery point I want. All right, so I can either go back, I can use the most current, or I can go back to yesterday. And then I simply hit activate. And at this point, a virtual instance of this protected server is being powered on. And so while that's being powered on, what I'll do is I'll describe a bit about the connectivity options. So here you can establish, we give you the instructions to establish a point-to-site VPN connection. So if you're at a coffee shop or you need to go to a coffee shop because a disaster has kind of rendered your on-prem environment useless, you go to a coffee shop, It has network connectivity. You can establish a VPN connection to your virtual data center in the Arcserve Cloud. If you have a situation where you have maybe partial outages, and you may still have that network connectivity between in your on-prem environment, you can establish a site-to-site connection between your on-premise environment as well as your virtual data center in the Arcserve Cloud. A bit more, while this is continuing to boot up, we provide information about the volumes and the retention period. This is where your data that is being backed up to the cloud resides. We give you information about your usage that you can scan through to see over periods of time. You can navigate back in time, navigate forward in time to get an idea of how your usage is, your data is being consumed. We also provide you the ability to create reports. Every day we send a daily digest that gives you a summary of the backups of all of your systems that you're protecting. We let you know in there if everything is okay. We let you know if there's anything that, if any syncs or backups were missed. We also let you know if there are any errors that you might need to look into. And then when you log into the portal, you go to the systems tab, you'll see those systems called out. As far as reports, we let you create reports on demand, or you can schedule a report by simply adding a report. You specify a name, you specify the delivery time, the frequency. We let you specify users that have access to this portal, as well as send to external. Maybe you're managing the environment and you have another coworker that may want to receive reports but may not want to get into the portal. You can send reports to them as well. And in this case, maybe they're interested in all of the systems, or maybe they're only interested in a select few systems. Maybe there's that one server that they want to make sure is up and running, so you can send them a report on that as well. And you can have multiple instances of reports as well. And then, of course, you can create users, different users with different roles to be able to access this portal and administer only certain aspects or complete administration. So if I go back to the disaster recovery portal, we hope this is a live demo. It should be up and running, and there it is up and running. So we have created a virtual instance of this server. It does get an IP address. We tell you when it was last backed up. We tell you the CPU utilization. And at the time I enabled disaster recovery, I specified that I wanted 16 gigabytes of RAM. And that is of my 128 gigabytes of RAM that I have. So now I can at any time power this server on. By default, they're usually powered on. And then when they're powered on, you can always power them off, or you can establish a remote desktop connection to them while they're running in the cloud. And then the other aspect is this button here. If I want to start a failback, oftentimes what may occur, disasters happened on-prem, you failed over to the cloud, you continued working on the cloud, so that's new data. New data has been created, new transactions have been created. You want to store those, or you want to get that data back to your on-premise environment when the disaster is resolved. And that's what this Start Failback button does. And I believe that wraps up the demo. That shows just about everything. We go back here. So once again, we wanted to make this a very intuitive and easy to use portal. And once again, it's a single portal, web-based, that manages both backup as a service as well as disaster recovery as a service. With that, I will transition back over to our slide deck, and then I will turn it back over to Christoph.
Thank you very much, Keith. Great demonstration, and I think it really shows how simple it is to get very, very efficient disaster recovery with this solution. So let me just wrap this up before we go into questions. There are a number of questions, and we want to keep everybody on time. So I'll wrap this up. And just to remind you of our portfolio, it's a very complete portfolio of solutions. What we've highlighted today is essentially our capabilities around Cloud Direct. We do support high availability, disaster recovery clearly, and of course, the starting point is backup and recovery, whether you're using an on-premise solution like Arcserve UDP, sort of classic, or whether you would like to go to our UDP Cloud Direct backup as a service. These are two options for you there. And of course, I mentioned the archiving offering as well, which is a new one for us that we introduced a few months ago. It's a very complete solution, and what we're doing is we're building a console that will keep things simple for you, and from which you can easily go access the service or the use case or the actual service level you need to leverage by using the technologies that are available in Arcserve UDP. So very, very powerful set of engines that run to help protect your data and really provide an SLA dial in many ways. So we're very, very pleased to again introduce Arcserve Cloud Direct. I want to emphasize one more time, it does not require any on-premise hardware. So if you're leveraging Cloud Direct, it goes straight to our cloud. And also, it's something that's easy to use, that is essentially easy to manage from a web-based type of GUI and the web-based console. And I think the demonstration really showed you how simple it is to get this enterprise class level of protection with a very simple interface. Let's go ahead and look at the questions. There are a number of questions, so keep them coming, and we'll try to cover most of them, and Keith will also help me. So let's start here. Are VM level backups, or do VM level backups have an option to be backed up locally? And if not, is this feature planned? A very good question, Keith.
Yes, currently we don't have the option to make a local backup of the VM image, but that is absolutely something that we are looking into delivering down the road.
Perfect, thank you. Does the Hyper-V agent work in clustered environments yet?
Not at the moment. The initial release does not support that, but once again, that is something that we know customers are leveraging. So that is something that we are quickly hoping to deliver shortly after we have this initial support. But that is something that's also something that we wish to get out as soon as possible.
Yes, and I have a couple more platform support questions that came in. Windows 10 and 2016?
Yes, both are supported.
Okay, Mac?
Yes, with Mac, we do support Mac. And as I mentioned, when you deploy the agent directly to a Mac, you're able to back up files and folders only. We don't do the imaging of the Mac. Yep.
Okay, thank you. There was also a question of, and I'll take this one, what is the RPO for the DRaaS solution? It's a very, very good question. Today, the RPO is a few hours, but I will just say that coming soon, that will be significantly reduced. So stay tuned, but one of the things we're doing with this technology is that we are adding and merging it and marrying it with some of the current technologies we leverage in our on-premise solution, Arcserve UDP, where we have not only options such as continuous data replication, but also some very efficient snapshot capabilities in the 15-minute range, as well as a lot of other capabilities. So you can expect, and again, I will not reveal too much here, but you can expect soon to see a significant decrease in the recovery point objective with this direct to cloud solution. Is the DRaaS solution hosted in the same cloud as the backup as a service solution?
Yes, it's in the same data centers as disaster recovery as a service. So when you back up to our cloud, we have our 2 data centers, one in California and one in New Jersey. Right now, the disaster recovery in the California, we have backup as a service and disaster recovery. In New Jersey, we have our backup as a service solution. So they are able to be co-located. So yes, they are in the same data center.
Yeah, and we don't have any Canadian data centers yet, so I just want to cover that. That's a question that came up. In terms of cost, yeah, so there was a question around cost and pricing in general. You know, is it by gigabyte, terabyte? Can you give us just a quick overview, very quick, Keith, and then I would like to ask you to please contact us at Arcserve. This phone number where we can give you more details on what the costs would be, but also point you maybe to a partner of ours who can also help you with these type of questions. So can you just give us a quick overview, Keith, on how the services are priced?
Sure. So for the backup as a service solution, we charge for the storage, and it's priced per terabyte. We have terabyte ranges that you can purchase, 1 terabyte, 5 terabytes, and the like, and you can combine those. I think there's a SKU even up for 50 terabytes. But essentially, for the backup as a service, you're paying for your storage only, and then for the disaster recovery as a service solution, you're paying for the storage, which is still in those bands of terabytes, as well as the amount of RAM that you believe that you will need to power on the systems in the cloud. So if you need 24 gigs of RAM, then that's what you purchase and that's what you're charged for. So in the event of disaster, you have those 24 gigabytes of compute capacity to distribute amongst the servers that you're protecting and want to power on in the cloud. So backup as a service, storage; for disaster recovery as a service, storage plus compute. We also have some additional things, such as the Active Directory server, or if you need additional IP addresses, those are also optional purchases as well. But essentially, that's how it's licensed.
Thank you. And this is obviously a very simple but also flexible model, and definitely one that has a lot of logic built in. But thank you for the question. It was a very good question, and thank you, Keith, for the details. There was a question around whether you could get a download link for this webinar afterwards. Mary will cover the details right in a couple of minutes when we close. But yes, this will be available on demand, so you can come back and take a look at the webinar again. There was a question around the granularity of the Exchange backup, and does the restore require a specific client for Outlook?
No, it does not. And then the restore, so we back up the database files. We don't have the granular where you can restore just even only we can restore single database, but it does not require any additional client software.
Okay, I think maybe the question was also around, is it like a mailbox level and things like that?
It is not a mailbox level. It is at the database level.
Thank you. And if that's a requirement, we do support, however, this level of granularity in our on-premise solution or option. So if you're looking for a direct cloud solution, this is definitely supporting Exchange, not with necessarily the level of granularity you're asking for. If you're looking for the granularity, if that's the overwhelming requirement, then we certainly have that on-premise, and then we can also send it off to the cloud. There was a question around archiving within our own AWS storage. The answer, I believe, which is not the topic of this call, we'll follow up with you on that. But yes, there's an AMI virtual machine you can use, virtual appliance, sorry, you can use. So that's possible. There was a very good question. Obviously, we have a configuration for SQL. Do we offer the same for Oracle?
Not at this time.
So definitely
we are keeping our pulse on, and yes, that's something that it becomes a requirement, then that's something that we will definitely keep an eye on it and look to deliver, but not at this time.
Yeah. Also a question on, and I think maybe we can go through the feature set again real quick and some of the partners we work with. So is the DRaaS offering all self-service, or is the premium offering where you guys do the management for me? So, in case maybe you can add to this, but I think, look, the solution is very easy to use, so you can manage it yourself, definitely. But if you would like to have somebody else do that for you, you don't want to touch it, you can work with one of our partners, who essentially is going to be your service provider. So that's a possibility. Is that? I think that's something that a lot of our end users do. They work with partners to manage for them, right?
Right. So if they go through a partner they can go through a partner to help them manage that. And to your point earlier, it is self-service. So if they want to handle it themselves, and we also our support team is also very good at helping customers get set up or get to a situation where it can be as easy for them as possible. So they do have the options. They can either handle it themselves, they can get our support team to help them quite a bit, or they can work with a partner and have the partner provide that level of assistance from a disaster recovery standpoint.
Perfect. Here's another question, which I think may actually pertain more to our on-premise solution. Can you have a second standby box replicated in a private data center and stand up a down server in our own secondary data center? Okay. I think the question is essentially yes. So the answer is we can do that with Arcserve UDP on-premise, where you can have a secondary copy or secondary appliance that is going to be replicating and with the ability to do an instant VM or virtual standby type of virtual machine should anything come up. So that's something we can do with the on-premise solution. If you want to go direct to cloud, a very similar process can as Keith explained and demonstrated, happens whereby we spin up a VM to give you access to your virtual network and your virtual data center, literally, and with your backups and access to your machines. Let me see other questions here. If a PC is being backed up, is it possible to change the folders being backed up from the Arcserve portal without having to access the user's device remotely or going on site?
So so at any time you can change your configuration. In fact, you can have multiple backup tasks. So if you are backing up one folder, you can go in and create another backup task to back up a different folder. At any time, you can remove a backup task. So yes, you can change it without going on the customer's premise from the management portal. If you know the directory that you want, you simply create an additional backup task, specify the directory, that file, or that folder that you wish to back up, and then the backup will, the next scheduled backup, or as I mentioned, you could do it on demand, at the next backup, it will back up that new directory.
Thank you. A couple of questions came up around ransomware. What happens if someone backs up their ransomware infected files to the cloud? I can take this one. Obviously, it gets backed up and it's still infected. We don't execute anything in the cloud, so it will spread to our cloud or anybody else, any other client in our cloud. But definitely, it would not be a good thing if you were to restore a system that was backed up with maybe a dormant infected file. However, because of the ability to roll back to multiple versions, if you know the when you were infected, or actually that's a way you could determine when you were infected, you can look at the various backup histories there and history there and figure out which version to recover from. And also, I want to point out that our data center is extremely well protected. It's enterprise level security. This is definitely, if you get attacked by a ransomware attack, it doesn't mean that we are getting attacked with our Arcserve Cloud. have significant, again, security in place. Mary, I'd like to turn it over to you. We're almost at the top of the hour. Thank you, Keith, for your demonstration and presentation and answering all these questions. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And Mary, please take us to the finish line.
Thanks, Christoph, and thank you, Keith, for that great presentation and demo. I want to thank all of our attendees for spending this time for us. As I mentioned before, this session was recorded, and we'll be sending out a link to that recording later today, so you can keep an eye out for that. If any of you have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us at arcserve.com. You can download a trial, talk to us directly, chat with us online. I want to thank all of you for spending this time with us, and have a great rest of your day.